Wendy and Dean Fachon are here. They are the parents of Neil Fachon, who, if you recall, fought to be able to partake in an experimental drug from the FDA, fought tooth and nail. Thank you for coming in to talk today. And now you guys are working very hard on this right to try legislation here in Rhode Island, right to continue with experimental drugs at the decision of the family and the patient themselves. So talk with folks. Let's go through what you had gone through and why this is so important.
Okay. Well, our son was diagnosed with terminal brainstem cancer March a year ago, and we had to seek out alternative treatment for him because the tumor was inoperable. The standard treatment was just palliative. It was not something that
basically
really gives a chance.
nothing that mainstream medicine can offer. If there was anything beyond palliative that maybe extend his life expectancy by a few months.
And he himself had really pushed to be able to do this, had he not?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But did a lot of research.
Did a lot of research. He was of a mind that if all he was going to buy was a few months with radiation sort of treatment, that he was really more interested in trying to go for the brass ring, see if there wasn't something out there that did offer the possibility of a cure. And we looked at all the clinical trials we could find. We ended up using a clinical trial out of the Brzezinski Clinic in Houston, a very controversial doctor, but he does in fact have patients who have survived DIPG, a small handful, some of which we actually had the opportunity to meet and speak with in person. And that was very persuasive for Neil. That made a big difference in his mind. Is that we've got to follow through with this and see where it goes.
So we started the treatment, but then the FDA came in and said, stop. Talk with us about how this happened and why this legislation is so important.
Okay.
Well, the FDA approved his clinical trial, and then subsequently, after he was up and running on the trial, for some reasons that are probably above and beyond what we can really go into, decided no, they want to put a hold on it, and they kicked him off. And that was when we were like, before that, it was all optimism. It was all, this has a real good chance, and we're feeling good about it. And
it's worked for a few other people.
It's worked for a few other people, and then suddenly it was like the worst time of our lives. It just took all the optimism right out of the equation. It was just all how we get through this. We tried working the angles with the politicians. We spoke with Senator Reed's office, and Jill Brimmer there was tremendous, and so was Senator Reed, in trying to talk to the people at the FDA. And he had a personal conversation, I believe, with the head of the FDA, but it still was a decision that came out of a department underneath that. Mm-hmm. At any rate, we had to ultimately hire an attorney, Kathleen Haggerty, and she did a great job presenting it in federal court such that we could get him back on the medication. We started out all optimistic, and even from after we were allowed to get back on the treatment, the atmosphere was completely different. There was a lot of tension.
How long was he off when this hold was in place?
Was it 2 weeks almost?
It seemed like 2 weeks or a little more than that, yeah. And this was at a point where he'd been given a prognosis by doctors in March that he may not survive past June, and here we were at the middle of May.
Yeah.
And it was just in disbelief that we could, be barred from trying this treatment.
And as you were going through this process, you learned of other states allowing families and patients to be able to try. 36 states that have right to try legislation.
As of this month, there are now 36 states.
As of this month, it's passed the House here, and now you are awaiting action on the Senate side. Mm-hmm. So we're here live, but when you possibly see this after the fact, it'll be within a link, and we're going to have links to the action that you're looking to take. Folks, emails that folks can send to the Senate about this. Yes. Because it's just not right to try, it's right to continue.
Right, that's the aspect of the bill that's more pertinent to our situation. Right to try, I mean, why the FDA did what they did, it wasn't so much to do with right to try, it had to do with, as I say, things that's tough to get into. But when we came back to the state, and we were trained on how to do the treatment ourselves, we were administering it every single day, and doing reasonably well, but then Neil had some complications that required him to go into the hospital. And while we were in the hospital, certainly it makes sense you discontinue experimental treatments or what have you while you're addressing the issue that you're in the hospital for. But as soon as he's stable, we started making requests. Can we start I mean, the real problem he's got is right here, you know, and no policies and things like that in the hospitals forbid it. And so that's really the right to continue aspect for us, is that, you know, had we had the opportunity to continue in the hospital, because he was there for, in the hospital, hospitalized for 30 days out of 50, maybe, and something like that, is that about right?
Yeah.
And in that time, he was off treatment for 30 days.
And that's when the tumor shot
And
started
the
to show
tumor-
the
and
most
tumor,
progression.
Yeah, started to progress more rapidly at that point.
But the bill in the right to continue piece, and the entire bill really, puts forth a protocol that I think helps guide and protect the patient, their family, the doctors, insurance companies. It tries to cover all sides of
Yeah,
the
it's pretty
issue.
balanced.
It's a very balanced.
So speaking of balance, the sponsors, the champions in the House, Rep. McNamara,
Mhm.
Democrat, Rep. Giarrusso, Republican. So there's it passed unanimously on the House side.
Right,
Yes.
there's no, seemingly no partisanship about this, and there shouldn't be. It's just a fundamental human right. If a woman's right to an abortion is the law of the land, how can a terminal patient's right to choose the treatment that he or she thinks is the best option for be denied? It's just wrong.
So, you know, here we are, we talked a little bit in the green room before the fashions came in, May 30th, towards the end of the session. We see a lot of things try to get pushed through, but of anything of more importance that you say needs to be done this session, how important is it that it gets done this session?
Oh, gosh, with what's happened thus far, it's very important. I mean, it's passed the House unanimously. If it were to just lie dormant and not get picked up by the Senate, that would be a tragedy. And you know, would it get, well, I don't know, I think that would be terrible.
So we're here making the appeal, you're making the appeal to
Definitely.
the
Yes.
Senate side to
Definitely.
take this
Please
up,
pick it up.
get it for a vote,
Yeah.
and again, we'll provide links for more information for your story.
Mhm.
Anything else you think viewers should be aware of as we're bringing this to their attention?
Let's say this has really been gaining, Right to Try has been gaining momentum. 3 years ago, the first 4 states were just starting to propose it, and here we are 3 years later, and 36 states have actually enacted it, with the 14 other remaining states looking at it.
Yeah.
So, you know, why not Rhode Island, you know?
No, why not the
There's-
federal government?
Why not the federal
At some
government?
point,
Yeah.
if every state were to have a right to try bill, then I would hope the federal government would start to say, okay, time for us to pick up the ball too. There have been efforts, but nothing has made it through, obviously, so far.
Well, continuing the fight again, and Neil's memory. Anything you want to share about Neil with folks? Just his fight.
Gosh. Wow.
He took everything in stride. He knew the chances were slim, and yet he never complained about anything. You know, he was always optimistic right up to the very end. And, you know, we miss him tremendously, obviously, and that's part of the reason that we're following through with doing this sort of thing, is partly to keep him alive, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as the fashions continue to fight Senate to take this up, again, we'll, if you're watching it live, again, we'll come back with the links when we have that up on the line tomorrow, so stay tuned with Go Local for more on this. So I appreciate your coming in today.
Thank you, Kate.
Wendy,
Thank you.
We appreciate the
thank you very
opportunity
much.
to
We'll
share.
talk soon, okay?
All
I'll let
right.
you around the corner, okay? Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, Wendy and Dean Fashion, I appreciate their coming in today to tell their story. Strong proponents of right to try legislation, right to continue legislation. And if you follow the story of their son, Neil, a student at East Greenwich diagnosed with incurable pediatric cancer, had embarked on an experimental drug path. The FDA had came in during it, had stopped it briefly, was able to recontinue it, was able to live almost a year longer than doctors had expected. So parents, Wendy and Dean, again, are trying to convince, again, the General Assembly, it's passed the House unanimously, trying to convince the Senate, and as I said, if you're watching this live, check back into Go Local when we wrap up with some more information tomorrow, including the links to those emails that if folks are interested, they can send to their senators, again, to get this to a vote. The Fashion family, I appreciate their coming in today to tell their story, Wendy and Dean Fashion, here in the Navigant Credit Union broadcast.